Introducing Monique Powell, founder and CEO of QuickCart. This Jamaica-based online delivery service offers convenient delivery of food, groceries, and more from a variety of restaurants and stores across Kingston and Montego Bay. Over the past 6 years, Monique, a powerhouse businesswoman and entrepreneur, transformed her company from QuickPlate, which focused only on food delivery, to QuickCart, which gives customers easy access to a much wider variety of products. She's here today to help you learn how to transform your business for the digital age. A hearty welcome to Monique Powell.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know about that intro Darren just did for me, but he is definitely a good friend of mine. So thank you so much. I am delighted to be here today. My name is Thea Ferguson, TV host and journalist, and I'm joined by Monique Powell, CEO of the Jamaica-based e-commerce and logistics provider, QuickCart. Monique, welcome. Thank you so much for being with us.
Hi, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure being here.
Now, the gentlemen, Darren and Mark and Kieran, have literally set the stage for us today. Now, we ladies, we got to hold it down in this 15 to 17 minutes that I have with you today. So we're going to just bring some energy, bring some life, and of course, all of the amazing business advice that you can share with us today. So I started to do a little digging when I heard that I needed to interview you today. And I'm like, who is Monique Powell? Who is this woman? And what do I need to know about her? And one sentence that I found or I read, in an interview that you did, it said that you are a tenacious woman who loves building things and putting pieces together. So talk to me a little bit about your business, how you started it and how you pieced this together.
Right. So QuickCart is an online platform that allows people to browse through listings of restaurants and stores that are in their area. They can shop online, add items to their carts, add meals to their cart, check out online, pay online, and have it all delivered to their doorstep, usually within an hour or so. So we are, I suppose you could call us, in a sense, the Uber Eats of Jamaica, in a sense. So that's what we have been focusing on building out. There is more to come that falls a little bit outside of the scope of what we have become known for, but it builds upon the expertise in logistics and e-commerce that we've been developing over the years.
And another thing I read about you was that you, as a kid, you would bring computer parts or ship computer parts from the United States and sell them in your hometown. So you started out early in your entrepreneurship journey. So talk to me a little bit about that tenacity and just the will to continue on in your journey.
Yeah, so I think I've always been entrepreneurial. So like you said, there was a time as a teenager when at that time it wasn't like now where you can walk into any store and buy a computer parts or accessories. They were pretty hard to get back then. So, we started bringing them in from abroad, selling them back for a profit. I also started my own web design business at around 17, thereabout. So even though I eventually got into the corporate world, I got a job offer at about 18 from a client that I had as a web design client. And that was kind of how I got started in the corporate space. I always had that in me and always knew that at some point in the future, I would eventually go out and start my own business.
And so that proves to us then that you're not new to this entrepreneurship world. You're true to this, right? So talk to us about some of the elements of being a successful entrepreneur and what can we as small business owners do just to ensure that our companies survive?
Yeah. So one of the things that I want to say is that I am still figuring out what it takes to become a successful entrepreneur. I don't think it's something that you ever master. They say new level, new devil. So every time the business grows a little bit, every time you increase the number of employees you have, you increase the scope of the business, there are new challenges that you've never had to deal with before that you have to learn how to navigate. So I feel like it's something you never truly master. So I'm not sure I can tell people how to be a successful entrepreneur, but what I can share are a couple of things that I've learned along the way in my journey. So one of the things I'd recommend to new entrepreneurs, and I mean, those within, let's say, year 1 to 3, start building out your team as early as possible. So, there is the tendency to want to save as much money as you can in the early stages of the business when you're probably not profitable yet. You're probably still figuring out product market fit. So you say, okay, let me do as much as possible by myself. And for the first maybe 2.5 years or so of the business, I only had one employee. Um, and a lot of people on the outside wouldn't know this because we were doing hundreds of orders per week. We had a bunch of partner merchants, that kind of thing. But what it meant was that I was accounting, marketing, finance. I was doing carrying a lot of the functions of the business. And what I realized now in hindsight was that if I had invested in getting a couple of additional team members early in the process, it would have propelled us much further along. So the tendency to want to save money by doing more yourself is actually a counterproductive thing. And if I could go back, that's one thing I would do differently. So that's something I'd like to share with people. Start investing in building out a team from as early as you can.
And you said it.
Another thing, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, continue. Continue.
So I was about to say the other thing now has to do with understand early on what will be required to build a business, especially if it's a business that goes beyond just running a personal consultancy or solopreneurship. It's a business that requires you to manage employees early on, requires you to manage a number of processes and so forth. Ensure that when you're going into it, you understand that it will probably be one of the hardest things you ever do. So it's important to ensure that you have support around you, that you tell your friends, you tell your family members that this is something that is I'm doing that is going to be very hard for me, and if you can support me in any way, if you can assist me in any way that I'm struggling, please do. I will need the help. And it's also important to take care of yourself. And this was another thing that I learned in hindsight. Because again, we had one employee outside of delivery contractors for the first couple of years. I found myself working 7 days per week, and I'd feel guilty about taking time off because there was so much to be done. And what I eventually realized is that you're no good to the company if you're burnt out. So understand that it's going to be difficult and that there's not much you can do about that. So you might as well pace yourself and take care of yourself throughout the journey.
And I love that part of the advice that is so important for people who are building their businesses. So you are a Black Caribbean woman in tech. That is to be lauded itself. Talk to me a little bit about the challenges that you've faced growing QuickCart.
I think a lot of it has to do with the business. So firstly, there's a business environment and the infrastructure in Jamaica, and I gather that in some other Caribbean countries it's very similar. So there were difficulties, for example, in getting an e-commerce business off the ground, right? We had to go the route of going overseas and setting up the infrastructure that we needed in order to be able to accept payments online. And that in and of itself was a very expensive venture for us upfront for various reasons. Now there are tools that are there that are a little bit easier, make it a little bit easier, but getting e-commerce business off the ground in the Caribbean with the present infrastructure can be a difficult and time-consuming thing. Another thing I think was particularly challenging was learning how to manage a diverse team. So as the business started to grow, what I found was that the skills that I had around managing a junior staff member, for example, and the approach used would be different from what's required to manage people at a mid level, people who are at a more senior level, and getting the most out of those people and managing the diverse personalities within the company. I think that's a very difficult thing. That's where you start to transition from being manager into leader, starting to understand how do I take these two different people who have very different personalities and still get maximum effort and input out of both people. And it's learning how to manage people is also a very difficult part of it as well. And definitely financing. I'd definitely be lying if I didn't say that access to capital hasn't been extremely difficult, and I find that it's a tough situation accessing capital as a young business in the Caribbean, in Jamaica. Um, and I think there are so many young businesses with bright founders that just need the capital injection to build out on what they've already started with.
Right, right. So as you're transitioning your roles in your business, you're now forced to pivot, right? And that's a word that we've heard a lot in the pandemic. So you pivoted from Quick Plate to QuickCart, where you moved from servicing restaurants and deliveries of food to now grocery items and other items. So talk to me a little bit about that shift and how did you handle that?
Right. So I would less call it a pivot and more an extension of services, because it was
Ah.
basically us leveraging the same technology that we had and the same expertise that we had developed, and moving from just food delivery to being able to deliver just about anything else. And the thing about food delivery is that it's pretty difficult in terms of just having more or less an hour to get everything done, um, before a customer starts to get a little bit antsy. And once you've more or less mastered food delivery, you can pretty much deliver anything else. You know, but COVID actually accelerated the plans that we had in place. So it was always something that we planned to do eventually, to expand into delivering more than just food. But definitely the COVID-19 crisis showed us that there were people who didn't want to leave home and wanted a way to get whatever they needed still brought to them.
And so what would be some of the takeaway lessons? What would be your top 3 lessons, I'd say, that you've learned as an entrepreneur in this time and space?
So top 3 lessons. So I'll go back to the things that I mentioned. So one, it's going to get harder before it gets easier, especially again if you're running a business with employees, with lots of processes, with lots of moving parts. So just prepare yourself for that, prepare yourself mentally for that, get the support you need, and make sure that you take yourself, like I said, very important. So I'm saying it again.
Mhm.
Another important thing I want people to bear in mind is that as they scale, one of the things that will be very important is paying attention to processes and documenting processes within the business.
Mm.
So once you have once you've developed a set of guidelines around how to handle situations as they arise, you document those. And what you'll find is that it helps you to deliver a consistent customer experience if you're a customer facing business, regardless of who is in front of the customer, because you have clear guidelines and processes. And it also helps you to onboard new people, which also helps with the scaling process and the speed at which you can start scaling when you do need to scale. So that's two. Yeah. And also, once again, just making sure that you put the right people in place around you. Your team is going to become very, very critical as you start to grow. The superwoman or superman thing only lasts for so long, only works for so long. And beyond the initial stages of the business, a lot of what you're able to accomplish will depend on the quality of talent that you bring on board and whether those people are compatible with the vision that you have for the business and with how you would like to execute your vision.
And one of the things I learned from Kieran just now, the digipreneur, was that digital support is super important for your business. So how has your business been impacted by digital support?
So we aren't a business that QuickCart isn't a business that adopted digital. We were digitally led and digitally driven from birth. We were born a digital business. Um, but what we find is that that permeates itself throughout the entire business. So it goes beyond just the technology that allows people to order food and groceries and so forth online, but it seeps into how we do things inside the business as well. So for example, we run a paperless office because everything is in the cloud. We use Slack and all those kinds of collaboration tools, Monday.com, all those tools that help us to work the way we need to without being in the same room all the time. You find that every problem that we encounter within the business, especially on the operations side, we think, how can we use technology to solve this in a way that is scalable? So we're very technology first and very digital first in our approach, and we've always been that way.
Awesome. So take care of yourself, manage your teams, and know that every level comes a new devil. Those are my 3 takeaways from you today. Monique, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure chatting with you. And whenever I come to Jamaica, I will definitely use QuickCart for my food delivery services. Thank you so much, Monique.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.